should we be making baby formula free for parents? 0207 862 2222 is the number to give us a ring. Baby formula Actimel, here it is, which is sold by Danone, have said that they will reduce the price of this product by up to 7%. Now, this tub of Actimel can be found in shops for £14.50. This all comes as there's been a report that desperate parents are stealing baby formula, buying it on the black market and even watering down feeds because they can't afford it. The latest research shows that the price of formula has also increased by 24% over the last 2 years. Critics have accused baby formula manufacturers of profiteering from the price of formula. So what do you think? Is the price cut enough, or should essential items like baby formula be free? Just to give us a bit of perspective on how much baby formula costs, we've got a few others here. We've got Kendamil, also an 800 gram pot here, £12. Then we've got Cowingate, it's the cheapest that we've got here, £10.50. And SMA Pro here, that's £13.50. And that just shows that they are between about £10 and £15. Now, as a new mum myself, I'd say it depends on what stage your baby's at, but at the peak of formula drinking, I reckon that would last about 4 days, Jasmine.
Oh my God.
So they're very expensive. What do you think? Free for all parents, or should more manufacturers be doing this sort of price reduction?
I'm not a parent, so I haven't been in your shoes, but there is a phrase that says you can tell a lot about society by the way it treats its prisoners, and I think you can tell a lot about it by the way it treats its newborn babies too, because ultimately this is a basic human right, isn't it? Milk, nutrients for newborn babies. It should be means tested. I'm not just saying go out and be a free-for-all for everyone, but a means tested society for families who can't afford it. I've got middle-class peers and friends who say they can't afford it, and if they're struggling to afford it, how do people who are on lower incomes afford it? It doesn't seem to be fair.
What do you think, Isabel? I mean, that sounds fine, means test it, but then that becomes very difficult. And sometimes you find yourself in a situation, an acute situation, where you just don't have any money in the bank and you can't afford the milk.
So I don't think this is a question of fairness myself, and I'm quite conflicted on it, because I'm one of the very few, statistically very few women who cannot breastfeed. So I had 3 children, and I think women come under massive pressure to breastfeed, and I literally did not produce enough milk, so I had to use formula for all 3 of my children, and it is really expensive and it is life-saving. I mean, my babies would quite literally have died had it not been for formula, and kind of looking at those packages almost bringing a shudder back really because of the trauma of the whole thing. I mean, this is obscenely expensive, and I think one of the points here is that it isn't a pure market. There isn't a normal market for baby feed, because the government, for a number of quite good reasons, interferes in this market. So the manufacturers, the supermarkets, are not allowed to do promotions on baby milk. You can't get buy one, get one free, or, you know, a discount. You can't even use vouchers against baby milk. And I think we need perhaps to revisit that, because the manufacturers and the retailers have, to some extent, seem to have taken advantage of that to hike prices up ever higher. Now, they will say their costs have also gone up, which they have for the production of almost everything. But really, nearly £15 for a tub of baby milk is pretty obscene.
So should it be free then for parents?
I wouldn't go down that route. I think there is no case for it being free for the vast majority of parents. You know, look, if you're going to have children, you ought at the very least be able to afford to feed them. But nor do I want to see any infant starving. I mean, we are a developed country. We're the 6th richest nation in the world. No babies should be going without milk. So I think for the most impoverished families, those who really, really have a proper case, then they ought to be able to get it, perhaps via their GP on some kind of voucher system. But by the way, not if they're smoking and spending money on cigarettes, because you know, a packet of cigarettes is about £10. But so if you can afford that, you can afford baby milk.
We subsidise so much, though, don't we? We subsidise sanitary products, contraception, IVF. We spend thousands on IVF cycles on postcodes. So if the government can give you thousands for an IVF cycle, but when that baby is born, you can't afford to feed it, it doesn't seem to make any sense. OK, well, let's now speak to co-founder and director of charity Feed. This is Dr. Erin Williams. Dr. Erin, thank you very much for joining us. Do you think that baby formula should be free?
Well, at the risk of getting scalps in my bum, I'm going to sit firmly on the fence in this one in between Jasmine and Isabel, because I think both of them raise really good points. The problem with asking if formula should be free is that it's never actually free. Somebody is going to pay for it, and whether that's families directly or the government through taxpayers, the money's got to come from somewhere. And as Isabel mentioned, because of the lack of competition in the formula market, we're in a situation where prices have absolutely skyrocketed. So I think the focus really should be on making formula affordable so that families don't get into the situation where they can't buy formula in the first place. And that, of course, the government have got a duty to ensure that families have enough income to be able to comfortably afford to feed their babies, whether that be through secure work that offers a real living wage, or something like the Joseph Rowntree Foundation and Trussell Trust Essentials Guarantee, where universal credit and other family support is well more than enough to cover the basic essentials, which formula is absolutely one.
Well, you say that it's an essential. I understand you're going to sit in the fence here, but there seems to be a real push against free formula for absolutely everyone. But we're willing to pay for free education for all children, and taxpayers are paying for that. That's taxpayers that don't have children. That's taxpayers that are sending their children to private school. We all agree that every child deserves an education. Why on earth do we not think that all children deserve good nutrition?
Oh, well, we absolutely do think all children deserve good nutrition, and I think that's why we really need to look at the formula market in more detail, because, you know, when there is competition in a market for things like medicines, we see the development of generics and cheaper alternatives, but we don't see that in the formula market. There's the other kind of issue of opportunity cost. So if we are paying for formula for everybody, even for families who can comfortably afford it, then what are we not paying for? You know, the NHS is absolutely in its knees at the moment, and that money's got to come from somewhere. And the other issue with national milks and things like that is this idea of stigma. So a free milk or a government-funded milk could potentially be seen as suboptimal or substandard, and families might feel stigmatised. So I think it's actually better to give families the power and the free choice to be able to buy the milk that they want to feed their babies. And if we make that affordable, then we prevent them getting into the situation where they can't access it. And, you know, things like Healthy Start and Best Start Foods, like we have up here in Scotland, are a way of doing that. The problem is that they're just not enough at the moment. So an immediate response would be to increase the value of Healthy Start. And the benefit of those types of programmes, where they're not restricted to milk, is that they also support breastfeeding women to buy nutritious and healthy food for themselves and to support the other children in the family. So
because initially
it's a wider issue than the milk.
I thought initially what you were talking about was the government maybe putting a price cap on the amount you can charge for baby formula. Is that something you would opt for? You'd think that was a good idea?
It's definitely something that should be explored. But again, as Isabel said, when you know, you have to think of all of the consequences of these decisions. So this morning, actually, I've just seen news that Greece has introduced a profit cap on infant formula. So companies will only be able to profit up to, I think, 7%. So something like that would actually be a welcome move, where, you know, families will have a more affordable product, and the profits, which are crazy that these formula companies are making, will be capped.
Okay, Dr. Erin Williams, thank you very much for joining us. Isabel, not somebody that you would opt for price caps generally, but do you think actually price caps on formula could be a good idea?
Well, it's a profit cap, so that still allows them to charge a certain amount of price if they manage to bring down their overheads. The point that your interviewee there didn't raise, which I think is a really important one, if we were going to start dishing this stuff out universally or even very liberally, you are going to undermine breastfeeding. And, you know, I was an exception. The reality is that 98% of new mothers can breastfeed effectively. I certainly don't think new mothers should be subjected to horrific pressure to do so. If it is really uncomfortable, unpleasant, it's not working for them and their babies, then formula exists for a reason. It's brilliant life-saving stuff. But the reality is all the evidence shows that mother's breast milk is the best for babies.
You are
Mother's
right.
breast milk is the best for babies, but there is data that states just last year that 84% of this country's first-time mothers and mothers use formula milk. So the very idea that the business of baby milk making just seems to be unethical to me.
OK, Natasha from London, what's your thoughts on this? Should we have free baby formula for everybody?
Yeah, I agree. I think we should. I was able to breastfeed my baby for 2 months, and then I had to stop due to him having health issues. And then since then, he's been on Aptamil, but it's been very expensive, like paying £20 each time for Aptamil. And then I feel like there's other, to say like single mothers. I have a friend who's a single mother, and she can't even afford to get formula milk for her child. So I do think that we should be able to, or it should be provided free for parents who really can't afford it, because it's very hard out here for some of us.
What about Isabel's comment that actually it could undermine breastfeeding? That actually giving baby formula out for free might discourage people from even trying to breastfeed?
Or maybe if they could just put it on offer, if that can help the situation. Well, or just like lower down a bit some pricing.
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, there's rules in place that they cannot put baby formula on offer. So you think this is something that the government should step in and really look at?
Yeah, I think they should look at it, or just like what you said, maybe fund it a little bit as well, for at least that would ease the pressure of some of us who have to get formula milk.
I can hear you're wanted. There's somebody wanting your attention in the background there. I suppose the devil's advocate argument here would be that the government already provide benefits. They already provide help, and that help is so you can afford essentials like baby formula. So can we afford to keep dishing out these sorts of things for free?
Maybe not all the time, but if it's something that babies need on a daily basis, and it's helping their development. There's a lot of mothers that aren't able to breastfeed, and I know breast milk is best, but if we've got to rely on formula for our little ones, then I feel like there should be something in place just to help a bit more.
Natasha, thank you very much for your call. I also, if I might be wrong here, but I think stress contributes to difficulties in breastfeeding as well. Now, if you don't have a huge amount of money...
There are women who might be on medication, they might be unwell, they might be on drugs. There are millions of reasons. Some people just don't produce milk, as we mentioned already.
Or don't produce enough. I always had to subsidise with formula. Christine from Glasgow, what's your thoughts on this? Do we have to start giving this stuff out for free? We wouldn't deprive children of water, for example, and young babies can't drink a lot of water. You have to be very careful with that. I think there's certain ages you're not allowed to give them it at all. So this is, their lifeline. Shouldn't they be able to access that?
Well, I think in certain circumstances, according to the parent's income, it should be free. As I spoke to the lady before, my daughter has twins and she has a 14-month-old baby. So you're talking about £45 a week, which is equivalent to about £180, £200 a month. And because obviously she's just had the twins who are 7, 8 weeks old, she's on maternity. So our funds are kind of low, obviously, because it's maternity pay. But I think the prices the manufacturers charge is absolutely ridiculous, because they're laughing all the way to the bank.
I mean, it's interesting that lots of people are talking about these profits and they're talking about the manufacturers. And actually, a lot of people seem to just want the government to step in to do something to crush those profits that they're making. But nobody Christine, you're not for the government just giving it out for free?
Well, see, in an ideal world, yes, I would love everybody to get it free. But obviously, there's maybe certain people in the high income that can afford to pay it. But I'm just thinking, because it's an essential for life, essential for babies. I mean, most mums, if they are on a very low income, they'll do without food to buy that formula.
Of course, but obviously that's not what we would want to happen at all. Christine, thank you very much for your call. Peter from London, we've got a male perspective on this. Do you think, it's lovely, do you think that we should have free baby formula?
Hello?
Hi there, Peter. What's your thoughts?
My thought is that the baby milk should be available from food banks because we have a good system there running already.
Yeah, I don't think baby formula is often readily available from food banks, and does anybody know why that is?
I think it is sometimes available in food banks, and lately we've been reading reports of it actually being rationed at food banks. So I think, again, food banks may be discouraged from giving it out for the reasons that the government discourage it as it being promoted. In other words, the government is very, very anxious that nobody is encouraged to take formula if they can possibly breastfeed.
So, Peter, with that in mind, the fact that it isn't often found in food banks, what do you think about the government just giving free access to baby formula if you need it?
I wouldn't make it available generally, but I think from a food bank is from a system that's already working.
OK, but food banks aren't really offering them regularly. So with that in mind, what would you like to see happen? You like to see...
Well, yes, I mean, the government would have to fund it.
And give it via the food banks. I think that's what you're saying, isn't it?
Okay.
And the legitimacy for that is that you can only use a food bank in theory if you've already demonstrated that you really, really need to, right?
I'm just being told in my ear that UNICEF advise against offering baby formula in food banks, which I find quite surprising.
It could be given out and pipelined through the NHS, you know. That's where all our other needs come from, whether you're malnutritioned or...
GPs is actually an interesting place where the GPs just keep a stash of it, you know, underneath the counter. So if you're in a desperate situation, there are places that you can go to just say, look, I don't have enough.
If you could get an appointment, that'd be great, wouldn't
well,
it?
Even if they just have it at reception, Peter, thank you very much for your call. You're right, food banks would be an appropriate place, but if they're being discouraged not to, it makes it very difficult for mothers to know where they're supposed to access this. Amanda from Lancashire, what's your thoughts on baby formula and giving it out for free?
I'd say it will means tested, but only available via, if it's being tested by, say, your GP or a health centre.
I suppose, Amanda, means testing is difficult, isn't it? Because we have all those criticisms over the benefits system and the means testing there and how difficult that can be to access. If you're a mother and you just find yourself in an acute situation on a Sunday morning that you've got no money in the bank for whatever reason and you can't feed your child that day, don't you just want to have somewhere that you can go to make sure that there is a pot there for your child so that they're not hungry?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I remember having to use my child benefit to buy my formula back a long time ago. But you see, the one thing is, like with the milk tokens, as you were mentioning, there's a lot of shops, once their milk tokens come in, swap that for money. So you've got to be careful where you allow this formula to come from.
Okay, but I mean, I suppose that's giving people choice on what they spend their tokens on if they want to buy the formula and use the money elsewhere. I don't really know. I suppose it's just how do we solve the problem of people having to steal baby formula because they can't afford it, and I'm not sure we came to any conclusions in this part. But thank you for your call, Amanda. Thanks for all your calls on this.